Hello guys, welcome to my channel. Please like and subscribe my channel for more awesome contents and do support. Let's start the video. Sirst could be seen sitting in his office going through papers that needs his attention. They ranged from permissions to travel to having a rating game. He could never actually understand why did things so trivial need his authorization. He sighed because just as he finished his current batch, another one twice as big was waiting to be checked and signed through. Greyfire, who was Sirst's wife and queen, was standing beside her husband clad in her maid's uniform. She was waiting for him to ask her for assistance. She knew how hard this job was on Sirst. He was a free-spirited soul that enjoyed freedom rather than being confined to a room all day. Maybe one of these days she could convince Ajuka to take over his work for a day or two and she could take Sirst's for a day out. She was bought out of her musing when a communication circle formed near Sirst's ear. "Oh hello Ryutan, did you need something?" asked Sirst as he leaned back into his chair. "Anna-sama, it's terrible, I need you," said Ryaz while sobbing. Sirst immediately turned serious and he said, "I am sending Greyfire over to get you. We can talk in my office." "Hi. Thank you Anna-sama," said Ryaz as the communication circle disappeared. Sirst then turned to Greyfire and just looked into her eyes. Any unspoken request was made and she nodded before disappearing in a red flash. Sirst sighed as he leaned back into his chair, hoping that his Ryutan was safe. If not, then whoever hurt her would be lucky to have his head on their shoulder. With Greyfire. When Greyfire appeared at Ryaz's location, she half expected them to be facing a strong opponent who they could defeat alone. However, she was not expecting all of the girls to be on their knees and to be crying their eyes out. She also noticed the glaring absence of a certain brunette. She then asked Ryaz-sama, "What happened? Why are all of you crying so badly? It's Psyche is dead." Ryaz stuttered out. Greyfire went cold as she heard that. She may not be as expressive as Sirst when it comes to her emotions, but she still viewed Sai as her lovable younger brother. So she asked in an urgent voice, "Ryaz-sama, are you absolutely certain?" "Hi, look, these are his evil pieces. He did not come home last night. When we searched for him today we found his evil pieces here," Ryaz answered in a shaky voice. "Very well then. Please step into this magic circle as we go to Lucifer's office," said Greyfire, who had a stoic expression on her face, but inwardly she was worried, very worried. The others nodded and soon disappeared in a flash of red light. Back with Sirst. It had been 30 minutes since Greyfire had left. We could see Sirst pacing up down his office, anxiously waiting for his queen to return with his sister and her peerage. A few moments later a magic circle with the Greenery emblem appeared and from it Greyfire appeared with Ryaz and her peerage. Greyfire nodded to Sirst before excusing herself and left the room. Sirst was pleased to see that she was fine physically but frowned when he saw that nearly the whole peerage was crying. The only one who wasn't was Kiba, and he looked as if he had seen something ghastly. "Ryutan, what's wrong? Tell me, I am worried," asked Sirst. "Anna-sama, it's Sai. He is dead. We found his evil pieces in Kua Park. It's all my fault. I pushed him too hard and he left me," stuttered Ryaz as she sobbed. "Wait, what? Sai is dead, your fault? Explain to me what happened." "All of it," said Sirst, using his experience as a faction leader to not show any emotions. However, on the inside he was in complete and utter turmoil. Ryaz tried to speak but was unable to form any words. Everything she said about him came back to her and hit her like a truck. Overcome by sorrow she started sobbing again. It was then that Kiba stepped forward and motioned Sirst to follow him outside. Once out on the porch, Kiba began to explain everything that had happened over the few months. He of course omitted the part where the Occult Research Club had bad-mouthed Sai. He said it all began 2 months ago, around the time that Travel had transferred into the school. Sai-kun had failed to confess to Ryaz, which caused her to run out of the room, despite the fact that Sai looked genuinely confused. Everyone ganged up and called him on it. After that, Sai-kun started spending a lot of time away from the club. He was there only for the least possible time. performing his contracts and leaving. This continued for 2 months before we found his evil pieces in the bush and contacted you," said Kiba. Xyz was taking in all that had been said before he finally spoke. "Did you find Saikon's body?" Kiba shook his head and said, "We did find a little flesh and blood but no body." Xyz brightened a little at this before saying, "Then there is a chance that Sai is alive. I will organize a search party for him and will let you know of the findings as soon as possible." Kiba nodded, and soon the peerage returned to the occult research club, hoping and praying that Sai was alive and safe. When Ryaz and her peerage left, Xyz immediately called Azazel, Michael and Yasaka and summoned them for an emergency meeting. Azazel appeared after a few moments, whereas Yasaka and Michael participated using holographic spectrums of each other. When all 4 leaders were available, Xyz informed them of what had happened and the possibility of Sai being kidnapped by the Chaos Brigade. For a moment the leaders were silent before Michael said, "That is troubling. I will contact all the churches with information on Sai and ask them to keep on a lookout for him. If he is being held anywhere in Europe, we will find him. I will send the information to our temples and other yokai kingdoms. Hopefully if he is in the eastern part of the world he will be able to locate him," said Yasaka. Xyz thanked them both, and both of them soon left to organize their parties. Xyz then waited for Azazel to say something. He knew that for Azazel, Sai was very much like his own son that he never had. So among all the leaders he must have been affected the most. Azazel was however staring at the ceiling, lost in thought. After a while Azazel said, "That wasn't the complete story, was it?" Xyz sighed as that before saying, "Nothing escapes you, doesn't it?" "No, there was a small piece that I chose not to reveal." Azazel had before saying, "Can you tell me? I am sure you know how I viewed Sai, right?" Xyz nodded before proceeding to tell Azazel what had happened over those 2 months, and what it had resulted in. Azazel then became silent again before he got up and started to leave, but was stopped by Xyz, who asked, "You aren't going to harm Ryaz, are you?" Azazel shook his head and said, "No, she is also somewhat like a daughter figure, and moreover she is a maiden in love. I understand that a heart in love can get desperate, so no, I'm not mad. Though I will sending in a team of my best trackers out hoping to find out where his body was taken." Xyz sighed in relief before asking, "What do you that his body was taken? He could still be alive, you know." Azazel turned around before touching Xyz on the shoulder and saying, "I have been a faction leader for over 5,000 years and I know when a cause is lost or not. This time it is. I suggest you mentally prepare Ryaz and the others. This news won't be good for them." Xyz did not say anything. He had to admit that Azazel made a valid point. Compared to Azazel in terms of being a leader, Xyz was green. He knew the chances were slim, but he needed to hold on to the hope and possibility of Sai being alive. It was then Xyz decided to visit his best friend Ajika Beelzebub, the person who created the evil pieces. If anyone had the slightest idea of whether Sai could still be alive, it was Ajika. Xyz then disappeared into a magic circle, appearing in front of a man with green hair. The said man looked up in surprise and said, "Xyz, what are you doing here? And why didn't you inform me that you were visiting?" Ajika, serious. "I want to ask you, is there any way for a person who lost his evil pieces to be alive?" asked Xyz. Sajuka was initially surprised at the question, but nonetheless answered, "Evil pieces strengthen the soul-holding ability of dying body. If they were removed forcefully, then death is almost sure. However, if by any chance the body somehow by another way managed to strengthen its core before the soul leaves it, it is possible for them to be alive." I see. Thank you for the assessment, Ajika. I will explain everything in detail soon. Bye," said Xyz as he vanished into a magic circle. Time skip 1 year. Sai had been officially announced as Kia. The peerage in the beginning were heartbroken but nonetheless moved on. And once again everyone in the club was smiling. However, Sai's disappearance affected the girls in more than one negative way. Ryaz and Akano had both started sleeping over with different guys. Asia had abandoned all of her faith. Zenobia had become something similar to Gonko. She hardly showed any emotion at all. Konko had gone from monotone to downright emotionless and hardly even talked anymore. Ryaz even had 2 new pawns to replace Sai. They were the wielders of the Kusanagi and the legendary water dragon, Mizukai. However, Ryaz and the rest of the peerage had become laid back and hardly trained anymore. The only ones still serious were Kiba, Gasper, Konko, Zenobia and Rossice, who wasn't affected by Seiya's supposed death as she wasn't that close to him, and because of their strength Ryaz had managed to get a decent record in the rating games. We currently find the peerage in the Greenery Mansion in the Underworld. They had a rating game at the weekend, and hence were waiting in the Underworld. Before suddenly a very loud explosion was heard. "What was that?" shouted Ryaz. At that moment Serge and Greyfire appeared. The latter one then spoke and said the old Satan faction have attacked 4 territories. The Citri territory is one of them. Go there and try to free as many kids as you can before they kill them. Please hurry. Milikas is also in the same school. Ryaz and her peerage nodded before teleporting to the Citri territory. Once they got there they began their operation and somehow successfully managed to take out most of the low-class devils and rescued most of the kids. However, they weren't able to find Milikas. Soon after they heard a booming laugh come from the roof and rushed to it. Upon reaching the roof they saw that the old Shalba Beelzebub, who they thought was dead, was in front of them and he had an unconscious Milikas in his arm. Ryaz shook in anger as she saw the unconscious figure of her nephew. "I will kill you." Ryaz growled out and fired a wave of destruction at Shalba, who simply shrugged it off, shocking Ryaz and her peerage. "I was expecting Serge to show up. His power of destruction is worth facing. Yours barely even tickles, much less can kill me. Now I will kill this boy and then all of you and force Serge to become a cold-blooded avenger who can be manipulated." "Ha ha ha ha," said Shalba. However, before Ryaz could reply a voice boomed the area. "Even after coming back from death you haven't learned your lesson, have you, Shalba?" This infuriated Shalba, who shouted, "How dare you insult me, the great descendant of the original Beelzebub? Show yourself or I will kill this boy right here and now." Shalba was about to stab Milikas before a blur rushed past the peerage and punched him hard, forcing him to release Milikas, who was then caught by the blur. As Shalba was flying back, the call of "Divide" was heard. Shalba looked up from the ground and shouted, "Volley, how dare you betray a fellow old Ma'u?" The figure, who was wearing a hoodie, removed it to reveal the face of Sai. He was instantly recognized by everyone there. He put Milikas on the ground and jumped in front of Shalba before the peerage could say anything. Sai looked at Shalba and said, "Balance breaker." "Welsh dragon balance breaker," rang out Reg's voice as Sai was now clad in his scale mail ready to fight Shalba with Serge and Azazel. Serge and his peerage along with Azazel were fighting of the Jabberwocky bought by the old Ma'u faction, along with other ultimate-class devils of the old Ma'u. The monster was inching its way to the center of Lilith before they heard a Chantai, who was about to awaken, and the White Dragon Emperor, who will take the law down to the darkness. "I walk the road of domination with infinite destruction, and by piercing through the imaginary dream. I shall become a pure emperor of White Dragon, and I shall have you obey the silvery white illusions and the perfect evil ways." Juggernaut Imperial Overdrive, a white mechanical dragon, appeared and started battling the Jabberwocky, whereas the rest of the Valley team scoured the city and started taking out any threat to the civilians. This scene surprised Serge and Azazel, but they none the else accepted the help and got back to facing the ultimate-class devils of the old Ma'u faction that were attacking the city. Back with Sai, everyone was staring at Sai, their eyes wide open in shock. Shalba pointed an accusing finger at Sai and said, "You bastard, how are you here? You were supposed to be dead. The reason I'm here is simple: to kick your ass. And for how I'm alive, I never really died, I just decided to go off the grid for a while," replied Sai. "HMPH, it doesn't matter, today is the day you will die along with the boy and the sister of that fake Ma'u," said Shalba as he fired a concentrated blast of demonic energy at Sai. Sai, however, remained rooted to his spot and took the hit head on. There was a loud explosion, resulting in a crater and smoke from Sei's position. The peerage looked on worried. They thought that Sei was gone again, after he had just come back. However, from the smoke came Sei's voice as he said seriously, "Is that the best you can do? You sure are an insult to the rank of Mao. I thought you'd be a little strong considering the fact that Xyz and Volley are, also, at Mao level. You insolent fool, how dare you speak that way to me? You are nothing but a bug when compared to me," shouted Shol beside Sei before he began charging an attack. Fire in his left, ice on the right. When the attack was ready, Sei disappeared from his position and appeared above Shalba and shouted Flaming Freeze Cyclone. The attack hit Shalba's head on and an explosion ensued. Sei picked up his lifeless body before taking Milika's from where he left him. Sei was about to leave when Eyes Senpai, Eyes Senpai Sei and the whole of the peerage ran towards him and bear hugged. He however did not react at all. After a few moments he asked, "Could you please let me go? I am running late and my girlfriend is waiting for me to come back." This shocked the girls, who did not say anything. After a few moments Ryaz asked and said, "What do you mean, Sei? Don't you remember us?" "Oh, I remember you all right. You guys are just bitches who want to use people and then throw them away after you are done playing with them. Now if you'll excuse, my team is waiting for me," said Sei as he released his wings before flying off in the air. The girls were all shocked. They now understood why Sei had left them. He had overheard them talking about him behind his back. They knew that they needed to apologize to him as soon as possible and hopefully he would forgive them and give them a second chance. Ryaz then turned to her peerage and said he must have gone to Lilith. "Let's head there." The others nodded before quickly following after. Sei, with Volley in his improved Juggernaut drive, was fighting the Jabberwocky. He had gotten in several strong and devastating hits in, but the regenerative ability of the damn monster was way too overpowered. "Tch, how am I going to defeat something with regenerative abilities of this scale?" he thought. "How about destroying it completely all at once?" suggested Albion. Valley grinned at that before he flew into the air and shouted, "Compression! Compression divider!" came voice from the divine dividing. Suddenly the Jabberwocky was being pushed down hard. Albion was repeatedly shouting divide and the Jabberwocky was screaming in pain. The monster's very existence was being divided. Soon the monster had been completely divided. Volley had literally removed the Jabberwockies from existence. He then removed his armor before sighing. As he did that he heard Sei's voice, "Seems like you are done as well." Volley nodded at that before saying, "Let's go get the others and then meet Azazel and Xyz." Sei nodded and both of them flew towards the two leaders while sending a message to the rest of the team telling them to converge. When both of them reached the two leaders, they found out that they too had defeated their enemies. Hearing them arrive, Azazel nonchalantly turned to look in their direction before his eyes widened at the sight of Sei. "Sei, is that you?" Azazel croaked out. Sei smiled warmly at him and while he dropped Shalba and gave Milika's to Volley he said, "Yo sensei, did you miss me?" Azazel did not say anything. Instead he went up to Sei and pulled him into a hug. He hugged Sei for a while before breaking away and then chopping him in the head. "Itai. What was that for, sensei?" asked Sei as he rubbed his head. "That, my dear boy, was because you left everyone without telling me and for making me think that you were dead," said Azazel, making Sei whistle and look away. "Ahem. What did you do to Milika's and why are the two of you together?" asked Xyz in a strict tone. "Oh, I didn't do anything to him. I stopped Shalba from killing when he was about to stab him sometime soon. And as for why we are together, Volley decided that it was time for his team to return to the Alliance. He decided to infiltrate this attack and stop the old Mao as a message to the Chaos Brigade that he was leaving. As he was short on numbers he asked me for help, which I gladly gave," replied Sei, getting nods of understanding from both the leaders. "We may be able to forgive the other members of your group, but Kuroka will be executed as she is a stray devil," said Xyz. Volley then tossed him a journal and said, "Read that and you will know the real reason why she did what she did." Xyz opened the journal and began to read. As he read it, his eyes widened before he had a look of disgust on his face. He looked at Volley and said, "Very well, this is big evidence of her innocence. I will be removing her name from the stray list. Also, now that you are back, what do you intend on doing?" "Oh, me and my time will be moving to Kua and hopefully start our third year at Kua. Most of us are around Seiya's age," replied Volley. "Very well. However, Sai, I need an explanation of where did you go and why did you leave?" said Surge. "Sure, that is a reasonable request," replied Sai. As he said that, the rest of the Valley team appeared along with Deli and Bahri. Kuroka jumped on Valley's back and kissed him on the cheek. Luffy moved to stand beside Sai, who picked her up in a princess carry before kissing her on the cheek. Luffy blushed at that but soon returned the favor by kissing Sai on the cheek. The scene shocked Surge, who thought that Sai would want to go back to Ryaz and the others. Whereas Azazel warmly smiled as he knew that both of his surrogate sons had their other halves. Ryaz and her peerage soon landed and saw the whole scene take place. Looking at the way Sai was treating Luffy made their hearts sink and caused their rage to rise. At the blonde, she then weakly said, "Sai." Sai turned to look at her with emotionless eyes, causing her to flinch at the coldness of his look. Sai then looked to Surge and said in a calm tone, "Do you